early 2000s. So when we connected again on Facebook, it was such a deja vu in some senses, and also felt beautiful to be able to connect with a stalwart like him again. And when he talked about the series that he was having, I was happy to chip in and share my thoughts with you guys. So I'll share my, Swati, have you got my presentation? Okay, great. So, however, I am sharing it. In case anything goes wrong, then you can, take over. So,
Certainly.
yeah, thank you. Um, is my screen, can my screen be seen?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, yes.
So I'll start from the beginning. Um, the motivation for this particular area came from, it happened in some senses organically. Although I teach marketing, over a period of time, I found myself doing research in areas like Akshita mentioned on things like sexual violence against women and normalization of consumption, normalization of sexual violence in the context of consumption spaces. I have a book which is on marketing of peace, where I look at religious violence. Specifically, this piece was done in the United States as a part of my postdoctoral work. Through a period of time when I was giving projects to students in my marketing management class, it so happened that many of them were social issues. So this kind of grew organically, and I've worked on areas like sustainable menstruation, how to have less impact on the planet, and instead of disposable sanitary napkins, are there other options available or not, and so on and so forth. So this has kind of grown organically. And recently, when I got my promotion last year from associate to full professor, at that time I appealed to the university saying that instead of calling me only professor of marketing, give me this extra designation, social innovation, and let me see if I can do something around those lines. So in that line of affairs, I am actually offering the first course on social innovation, and I call it the business of doing good. So in that space, and it's an undergraduate course, an undergraduate elective that I'm offering, and this elective that I will offer goes not only to business students, or our program is called Bachelor of Management Studies, so not only to them, but also to engineering students, also to humanities students, also to natural sciences students. So all of them will be in the class. So that is one of the advantages of working in a multidisciplinary university, where you can reach out to students of all hues and colors, so to say. So my topic for today is how can business do well in terms of doing financially well and also do good. And here doing good means doing good to the world at large. So the plan of the presentation is such that first I will talk about what is the business of business? Why do we have businesses in the first place? The second thing that I'm going to cover is what does doing good really mean? Then I'm going to cover why should business walk the path of goodness, and the question of how to go there. How do we walk that path of doing good to the world? And then I'm going to give an open invitation to all of you who are here to join hands with me in the journey that I'm taking, uh, starting from the coming semester. So what is really the business of business? Now, we all know that Milton Friedman, in his famous article in 1970 in the New York Times, uh, talked about that the social responsibility of business is to increase profits, and any other thing he mentions is really, not really meaningful. So that is what he had to say way back in 1970. So that definition that he gave of doing business, the business of business is to do business, so to say, does it still remain true today? Can we afford to only look at profit motivation? So, what does really doing good really mean for our purpose right now? So, we know that over a period of time, India is one of the first countries to actually institutionalize corporate social responsibility. And corporate social responsibility means that there is a mechanism by which a corporate organization would try to give back to society, and a certain percentage of its income has to be given back to society. Now, corporate social responsibility have, whether does that mean, is that the good that we're talking about? Now, it has been seen that corporate social responsibility is important, and this is article which came in Management Science in 2013, and it talks about how CSR and the firm value are positively related, provided there is high customer awareness of the kind of stuff that it is doing. And this customer awareness is proxied in this piece by advertising expenditure. So what it in effect means is CSR can be valuable for a firm's value creation if and only if people come to know about it. So does that mean that CSR, basically the effect of CSR is, and the objective of CSR is basically impression management? Are we trying to impress our consumers by saying that we have done so many different things? Is that what the objective is? Or is it much beyond CSR? For example, say there is this whole concept of triple bottom line, right? So we talk about not only profits, but we talk about people and we talk about planet. So John Elkington, who came up with this idea 25 years back, more than 25 years back, 27 years back actually, he in a Harvard Business Review article in 2018 talks about why it is time to rethink triple bottom line. And the reason he talks about this, although he came up with the concept of triple bottom line, he says that, you know, triple bottom line has not really gone beyond profit targets, and people, although they are making, they are reporting other stuff related to people and planet, they are really not the focus yet. And he said that it is really time to look beyond and try to think seriously about what can be done about it. And in this paper, he also talks about whether it is time to rethink capitalism as we know it. Okay, so now if we look at some of the recent, happenings around us. Now this that I mentioned, these are all newspaper cuttings. So one is not Walmart thing, but the Financial Express, for example, in a few days back, as July 16th of this year, Reliance said, and Reliance Industries Limited said that it wants to be carbon neutral by 2035. That is something coming from energy major. So there are other big shots in the business like Unilever, which is talking about sustainable living and how they intend to do it for countries like India, and of course all over the world. And then other companies, other large companies like Walmart, they decided to go for concentrated products in liquid detergent category as early as May 2008. And this was a collaboration they had with Unilever, that they decided that in order to reduce the impact on planet, this is the path that they are going to take. So what is really happening here? So from the time of 1970s, when it was thought that the business of the business is to do business and social responsibility of business is to make profits, why are such kind of things really happening? So we need to look a little deeper into why such things are really happening, and people are making these commitments to the planet. Less on people, however, but I'll come to that. If you look at more, then you will see that there are companies like Colgate. Recently, they have come up with vegan toothpaste, and in a package which is, sustainable packaging, so to say. So they have made that leap towards, more friendly planet, so to say, right? So similarly, PepsiCo is also coming up with an approach to packaging which is environment friendly. For example, say they have decided that in their presence in college campuses, they are going to have these kiosk kind of a thing where PET bottles or even cans will not be doled out, but people can bring their own glass bottles and they can refill them. So therefore, this is a new thing that they have started, and they have a plan. They have a comprehensive plan on packaging and how one can make that packaging more sustainable. Now, this comes from the chairman of the board of Nestle, where he says, so that in our society today, the right to be active, there's a society that gives us the right to be active and gives us the license on continuing to be productive in society by solving societal challenges. Because if we do not solve them, it's not an option. You have to solve them, because if you do not solve them, you will not have a business at all. So that is what he goes on to say. Now, we all know about Michael Porter and his, immense contribution to the world of business. We will see a short video now on why business can be really good at solving social problems and what Porter has to say about it. This is a TED Talk, and we will go on to that. Swati, do you think you can play it, or do I try to play it?
I can.
Yeah? Okay, thank
If
you.
you have to stop sharing on screen.
I have to stop sharing?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Can everybody see the screen, please?
Yes.
We're all aware that the world today is full of problems. We've been hearing today, yesterday, and every day for decades. Serious problems, big problems, pressing problems, poor nutrition, access to water, climate change, deforestation, lack of skills, insecurity, not enough food, not enough healthcare, pollution. It's problem after problem. And I think what really separates this time from any time I can remember in my brief time on Earth is the awareness of these problems. We're all very aware. Why are we having so much trouble dealing with these problems? That's the question I've been struggling with. Coming from my very different perspective, I'm not a social problem guy. I'm a guy that works in business. Helps business make money. God forbid. So why are we having so much problem with these social problems?
Swati, it can't really be heard.
Sorry?
I can't really hear it. I don't know if others can.
No, I am also unable to hear Swati. Can you do something about it?
Let me check.
Problem, or at least one of the problems in many of the social challenges we face. Think of the fast food industry, the drug industry, the banking industry. Now, this is a
Is this
low
better?
point in the respect for business. This is not seen as a solution. It's seen as the problem now for most people. And rightly so in many cases. There's a lot of bad actors out there that have done the wrong thing, that actually have made the problem. So this perspective is perhaps justified. How have we tended to see the solutions to these social problems? These many issues that we face in society. Well, we tend to see the solutions in terms of NGOs, in terms of government, in terms of philanthropy. Indeed, the kind of unique organizational entity of this age is this tremendous rise of NGOs and social organizations. This is a unique new organizational form that we've seen grown up. Enormous innovation, enormous energy, enormous talent now has been mobilized through this structure to try to deal with all of these. And many of us here are deeply involved in that. I'm a business school professor, but I've actually founded, I think now 4 nonprofits Whenever I got interested and became aware of a societal problem, that was what I did. Form a nonprofit. That was the way we thought about how to deal with these issues. Even a business school professor has thought about it that way. But I think at this moment, we've been at this for quite a while. We've been aware of these problems for decades. We have decades of experience with our NGOs and with our government entities, and there's an awkward reality. The awkward reality is we're not making massive progress. We're not winning. These problems still seem very daunting and very intractable, and any solutions we're achieving are small solutions. We're making incremental progress. What's the fundamental problem dealing with these social problems? We cut all the complexity away. We have the problem we can't see. We can make progress, we can show benefits, we can get results, we can make things better, we're helping.
So I think we can stop it. I think I'll just talk about what he speaks about because the screen is stopping.
Should I stop share?
Yeah. So I think he has gone there and I can take it. I'll share.
Sorry?
Yeah. So what I said was because the voice quality, the audio quality is choppy. So I'll take over there and take it from there and talk about what.
Good. Would you want to try sharing it from your side? No?
So I will share my screen and go back to my presentation. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So what Porter is basically saying is earlier we thought that social problems, the way to solve it is to kind of tell the governmental organizations to look at it, to kind of ask the government to look at it. But the problem of doing that is that of scale. Like how do you reach to more people? And in any case, when we are talking about non-government organizations doing certain things, they are not necessarily generating funds to do it. In any case, they have to look for other avenues in order to get the funds to make changes or to address societal problems. So what Porter argues necessarily is that in order to scale up operations, in order to really make an impact on different people, businesses are in a unique position to make those changes and to see that effect, to really make that effect on the ground level. Business are unique entities who are capable of doing that because they can generate revenue. They can have a steady flow of funds and they don't have to look up to others in order to get those funds. Okay, so that was Michael Porter for you. Now, next the question is, okay, so business can solve social problems. Okay, understood. But why should it do so? What is the reason that, like Friedman said, that the business of business is to do business? Now, what makes us believe that we should walk a different path and we should try and do something different? So why should business walk the path of goodness? Now, why do good, right? So it's the answer is that basically, it is good for business if they do good, because consumers basically prefer brands which are socially responsible, and they are willing to pay a premium price sometimes for buying these brands. And I'm not saying that this is true only in Western countries where there might be more disposable income, but even in a country like ours, and this study is one which was published in Economic Times in 2017, where it talks about how consumers actually prefer socially responsible brands. And in this other one that I've quoted here, Havas Media Group, in 2019, they published this study where they're saying that there are brands which are meaningful brands in the minds of consumers. And unless consumers really have this emotional connect with you, you might be dead tomorrow and nobody would really care. So on the other hand, if you're a meaningful brand, it has been found that even in something as mundane and as money oriented as stock market, the stock market performance of meaningful brands outperform others by 134%. So as you can see, it makes business sense to do good. And many consumers these days see buying as a political act. I buy from this company because they believe in certain values that I believe in. If the brands that might be selling things that are good for aesthetics, might be good for other stuff, but if I do not align with the values of the brand, I will not buy them. So it's as simple as that. And also, it has been found, I will not go to the last part because that is more about communication than anything else. But the idea that I'm trying to put forth here is research is showing, and repeatedly research is showing, that people actually prefer brands which are doing good to the world. Now, this is, I will again try and see if we can play this. She is Wendy Woods, and she's a part of Boston Consulting Group. And this is a wonderful TED Talk. I hope we can at least hear parts of it, even if not the entire thing. And she talks about how it is time to move away from metrics like return on investment to something like total societal impact. Swati, can we try to play this, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Give me a moment.
No problem. Basically, in this presentation, she makes a business case and how business can benefit from doing good. So that's why this is such an important, TED Talk. And I love the arguments that she makes.
You'll have to stop sharing them.
I have to stop sharing, right? Yeah. Done it.
Is it better now?
Years ago, all the developed countries in the world, the wealthier ones, and
Is it clearer now? Was it clear?
Yeah.
It is not clear, Swati.
all of the charities together donated about $200 billion to developing countries.
It is okay,
The ones
Swati.
that bear most of the burden, the heaviest burden of the world's biggest problems: poverty, hunger.
This thing stopped. There is no audio.
I think, Paromita, if you can summarize what she has said.
Yeah. So, so basically, I would encourage people to go through the TED Talk, because this is a really beautiful TED Talk, and she really talks about how basically the metrics of looking at what are the exact kind of benefits that business gets when it does good to the world. That is, yeah. So I could easily do that. So do I do it now or later? Somebody is mentioning in the chat if I can send the link of the TED Talk.
I'll put both the links on the chat box right away.
Yeah.
You can
Do you want me to do that, or would you do it?
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. So what she talks about necessarily is looking at certain metrics. And of course, Boston Consulting Group is a management consulting firm, and they talk about specific metrics like total societal impact, for that matter, which actually, it makes much more business sense if you are doing good. And she shows with examples of different companies who has been able to reap those benefits. So it's not that you are doing good only out of the goodness of your heart, but nothing is stopping you from doing it from the goodness of your heart. But the idea is if you do it, you actually get concrete benefits, even in the economic sense, okay? So I'll again start sharing my screen and yeah, go there where it was, yeah. So this is what, Wendy Woods talks about. And if you can see that, sorry, now my screen is, yeah. So also, there has been different studies like this particular study, which is the Cone Purpose Premium Index, which talks about how companies with a strong reputation also have a strong purpose score. Like, what is the purpose? So consumers actually prioritize companies which are deemed to be responsible, deemed to be caring, advocate to protect for the environment, and so on and so forth. And purpose, like the company's purpose, could drive 13% of the company's overall reputation. So therefore, companies with higher purposes are likely to be favored much more by consumers than companies which are not aligned with such deep, meaningful purposes. Another reason, and this is very important, like Deloitte does this survey to really understand the sentiment of young consumers. So this is a millennial survey, global millennial survey. They have brought out this survey every year. So in 2018, one came out, 19, one came out, 2020 recently came out. And if you look at some of the results from this survey, they are quite phenomenal because they talk about how the Gen Z, which is close to half of Gen Z, that is 48%, and 44% of millennial respondents said that they are stressed most of the time, which is not a good thing really. Also, half the respondents in the primary survey that they did before COVID-19 hit said that, it's too late to do any change. But the pandemic, on the other hand, did something phenomenal. And this people started feeling a sense of personal responsibility for the environment. And now they think that they might be able to do something at individual level to bring about a change in the world as it is. And both the generations, the millennials as well as Gen Z, see that they are much more willing to support local retailers, smaller retailers after the pandemic because they want to prioritize that, they want to support them. And also, majority of the respondents give businesses and governments high marks for their pandemic response. Of course, this is not true in the case of India, perhaps, but in other countries, like for example, I am doing this piece on, this research work is currently on field, and we are trying to understand Indians who were in the lockdown, going through the lockdown, how did they feel about how the government really, handled the entire lockdown situation. So the Indian situation is not really looking good as far as, the interview data is concerned that we have gotten so far. But, my collaborator for this study is Helen Sherrier of CIMA Business School, France. And, she had a different story to tell. She was saying that the president in her country has actually, the popularity of the president has gone up because of the way in which the government handled it. I'm sure in countries like New Zealand also one would see similar kind of stuff, but maybe not in all countries. Also, many of these global millennials, they are also prudent and literate. And this is very important, the last point, where, these folks want to work with companies which addresses diversity, which addresses inclusion, which addresses ideas of sustainability and reskilling. This is very important because this is our future generation. These are the people who are actually going to run companies and head companies and, basically do everything related to running the corporate organization. And these are people who want to work in companies which align with their values. So it is not only as consumers that you need to understand that you need to reach out to these people and align with their values, but also who are the people who are going to work for you. If they do not believe in your values and if you do not care about the environment or people, maybe they will not work for you. You will not get the best of, best of the talent in the market, so to say. Now, then, the question comes of how it has been found, like, Professor Eccles of Harvard Business School and PricewaterhouseCoopers, they did this study where they found that only 30 to 60% of a company's value is actually reflected in the financial performance numbers in the annual report. On the other hand, there are much of information which is actually missing. And when that information is missing, you are unable to take an informed decision about where to invest your money. So this whole idea of responsible investing has come in. So in this course that I was mentioning that I'm going to offer in Monsoon, some of my colleagues in finance area are actually going to take that module on impact investing and what it means and what is the implication of that field. On one other thing, so we have all heard about, the financial bigwigs where we talk about the top companies who are, the Bombay Stock Exchange Index or New York Stock Exchange Index and so on and so forth. But this United Nations Institute, Sustainability Institute, they have come up with this matrix where they look at the social commitment report and the sustainability development goals that the United Nations talks about. They look at how far for-profit companies are making this commitment to the SDGs. So they come up with the SCR 500, which is similar to the New York Stock Exchange Index and so on and so forth. So therefore, companies are, and it is not only companies who are doing it, even heads of state are signing and committing to make it happen, the sustainable development goals and their commitment to actually see it to fruition. Now, how do you do it? Okay, so I'll give you some examples of how it is being done. This is a case study of Harvard Business School, and it was, I think, published in 2017 or some such thing, where it talks about sustainability at Unilever. So Unilever actually made this commitment that they actually joined hand with this non-governmental organization called Rainforest Alliance, which tries to make sure that the rainforests are protected, employee rights are protected, and employees are not really, we know that tea gardens are infamous for abuse of employee rights, right? So therefore, they make sure that that does not happen. Then they certify tea gardens, saying that here everything has gone on properly, and Unilever would actually go on and acquire that kind of tea. So Lipton Tea Gardens, Kenya, that's where it started, but they do have presence in India and China as well, where they source tea, saying that this is certified and they have followed all good practices, sustainable practices, people-friendly and planet-friendly practices, and therefore, so they got into this alliance. In fact, in this case study, this is a fascinating case study. I might as well teach it in my class. So what they show is how, when they started having communication, like we talked about this earlier when we were talking about corporate social responsibility and what it does in terms, if you can communicate it to the target group, what it does for your business. However, CSR might not be really directly associated with your business, but here it is a business model. Like they are doing business in such a way that it is friendly to the planet. And what was seen was when they started having advertisement in different countries where they said that, we have done this, we are helping farmers, we are helping employees, we are helping our environment, and we are trying to protect rainforests. It was seen in many countries, not in all, but in many countries, sales went up, profitability went up. And even so they had to do some hacks here because everywhere it did not happen. But in countries which really cared more about the environment, and when you communicate in that way, it really made a difference, a lot of difference. So the point that I'm trying to make is that it helps if your business model is such that it incorporates sustainability, it incorporates good people practices. It helps in terms of your profitability. It helps in terms of your sales figures. However, everything is not hunky-dory. This is a Wall Street Journal article which came out in 2011, which is questioning whether Rainforest Alliance and the audit that Rainforest Alliance does, whether it is really done properly or not. So all is might not be good, but at least one part that we have understood is that if you can make consumers understand, even at for products which are not in the high price segment, like tea is not, right? And they have done it primarily for Lipton Yellow Label. And there are certain other brands as well, but primarily Lipton Yellow Label. But even in that case, you see some change in terms of consumers' preference, in terms of what kind of brands do consumers want to go for. So this particular thing where they're saying, you know, it's not really true, while it might be that it is not really true, but at least this part is true, that you have a more, what should I say, you have more power with the consumers, you have more likability in the consumer's mind if you are able to make that connect with people and with planet objectives. Again, another one, this is H&M, and H&M as in the clothing brand. They have come up with this line of conscious products, which they say is, you know, they have this conscious hashtag, and they say these are green practices and so forth. And there are people who have called them out saying this is greenwashing, which means you are saying you are doing it so that you get some benefits from the consumers, and consumers actually prefer you over others. But actually, you are not really doing it. You're doing it for the sake of telling it, but you're not actually doing it. So these have been some of the issues around it, but at least, like I mentioned earlier, we know that consumer prefers such product over others. Now we go on. So we have talked about planet for some time now. Now let's talk about people. Do people matter? If people matter, then why do we treat people by law? This is a Harvard Business Review article, which was published in 2002. Employees of the company are treated by the law and their accounts as property of the owners and recorded at cost. Isn't that demeaning? So that is the question. They say that you are treating employees as your something that you own, something to be owned. So do people really matter for you? So something interesting happened of late after the pandemic struck. You know, this is endeavor done mainly by Harvard and Oxford. And if you're looking at this on the other side in Guardian, and it was also published, I think, in India by Wire. You know, there was an appeal made by academics all over the world, appealing to governments, appealing to international bodies to say that humans should not be treated as resources. It is demeaning. And employees should have a say in corporate governance. They should have a say, like, you know, shareholders have a say in what happens to companies. Employees should have a say. And they wanted changes made in the structure of corporate governance and governments to make those changes in law so that this might be possible. Okay. So, and this was published throughout the world. In fact, I also got, and if you look at the names, you can see what kind of names have actually signed on this thing. And you can still do it. You know, if you look up this and you can go and decide to sign on it. This was done as an advocacy measure so that employees are given more importance in corporate organizations. And there are other people, you know, social businesses, responsible businesses, which have taken up measures like this. When they hire, they do not do any background check. If you have a criminal history record, they will still hire you, even if you don't have a good credit record. They will still hire you. Now, this is, there is this bakery in New York which does it, but many other people have joined the fray as well. And they say that don't look at the background of people, trust people. And if you trust people, you know, people, the reason they go for criminal activities is sometimes they have no other options. So don't discount people. Don't tag people and label people and say, you know, you are unworthy and you are unemployable. You know, people cannot, these convicts sometimes never come out of that vicious circle. And therefore, this company, when it gives a platform and it does not ask questions, it has been seen that these are not only most loyal, but extremely productive employees. Because when you are there with your employees, when you trust them, we can see that in our daily life as well. When you trust somebody, they give the trust back to you. Not always, perhaps not 100%, but maybe in 75-80% they would do that. So things might be changing on the people side as well, not so much already, but there is a movement which is moving around those lines, and I would definitely encourage friends who are there with me today, and we will speak in a little bit. So I would highly encourage you to look at this memorandum. If you think it calls to you, really sign the memorandum. Now the question is, how do we do good? We understood that doing good might make good business sense more than CSR, like going beyond the scope of CSR, it might still be good, but how to do good? Now, how to do good, I would say that there are basically two tenets that I'm going to talk about. One is social innovation, the other is social marketing. Now, what is social innovation? Now, social innovation basically is developing and deploying effective solutions which challenge systemic social and environmental issues. There are certain issues which are very difficult to solve, and they're systemic issues like poverty, like, it's difficult to get out of poverty. I'll give you an example, like, very dear, I've not taught him directly, but I came to know about this guy. His dad was, in an education, in a school, he used to drive the bus of that school. And his son was studying in this school, which is, one school in Pakistan, I don't know to name it. And then later on, he went on to do his undergrads in political science in a very good college. But you can understand what kind of background he comes from. He actually used to stay in such an underprivileged area that there was no electricity. I know for sure that he had to go and study under street lamp, basically. That's how he studied. So this guy, later on he went on to TIS, he did his master's there, and actually went abroad as well. But he fell sick. Now, once he falls sick, there is a lot of expenditure that had to be made, medical expenses. After that, this guy found it so difficult to rise above it, and go back. And he was productive, he was brilliant, he was academically very good. It was such a struggle for this guy to come up and do well. So, these are, like I was saying, these are systemic problems. Poverty is systemic problems. That is so easy to give up because especially in this pandemic situation, you are not seeing avenues to go forward. People are cutting jobs. There are no PhD scholarships, so to say. Difficult problems. But social innovation can come up with mechanisms of trying to solve these environmental issues and social issues. So social innovation is not necessarily unique to the non-profit sector. It can be driven by politics, it can be driven by government, like if you have new models of public health, or when we have new kinds of markets that we talk about, like open sourceware, for example, or new movements like the fair trade movement, or even in academia, when we come up with new pedagogical model, or with social enterprises and the kind of things that social enterprises deal with, like, for example, microcredit. So therefore, social innovation is not necessarily, some people think social innovation means social enterprises. Not necessarily so. It is basically a mindset. And this Daniela Papi, she was Oxford University's School Center for Social Entrepreneurship. She was ex-deputy director there. She's saying that social innovation is basically something that you not necessarily major in. Like we major in business, we major in engineering, we major in physics. It's not something like that. It is basically a mindset. And we tend to focus it too narrowly on business, but it is possible to go beyond it. It is possible in our courses, no matter what courses we are teaching. We might be teaching accountancy, we might be teaching auditing, we might be teaching history, but it is possible to give them the skills or make them start thinking in a way where they can, come up with mechanisms of or models which will enable social change. Okay, So that is what social innovation is all about. Now, there are many businesses which are purpose driven. So I have done this, we published this piece in 2018 in Journal of Business Research, where we looked at a particular social business, which is called EcoFem. It is based in Auroville near Pondicherry. So these people, what they do is they deal with sustainable menstruation. So these two women who are the founders of this company, none of them had business background. So one was actually a physiotherapist, if I remember correctly. The other one, she was, I'm forgetting, her father, I'm sure, was an anthropologist. And she grew up in Indonesia, but she's European by descent. And the other woman that I mentioned, she is basically an Australian. So they came to Auroville for some other work, and they saw the condition of women there and the way in which they deal with menstrual hygiene, and they felt called to do something about it. So I remember Kathy, who is the entrepreneur in question that I'm saying, one of the co-founders, she was telling me this story that, when I came and I was staying in Auroville, and after menstruation, I had to actually dispose my soiled sanitary pad. I was told that put it under the soil. So that was a clarion call for her. And she felt that, this I cannot do and I need to do something about it. So she looked up and she tried to understand the ground realities of India and what kind of waste management system we have in our villages. And can we afford to have disposable sanitary napkins? What would it do to the sewage systems in our villages? So she came up with this idea of cloth pads, and very beautifully made cloth pads. And she trained people to make that. She has workshops in which she talks about, her team, and they have ambassadors who go and talk to women and young girls about menstrual hygiene and how to take care of their bodies. They teach them how to make sanitary pads and so on and so forth. So this business, of course, we have written an academic paper on it, but from trying to understand it from an institutional complexity perspective and social movement perspective. But the idea is this woman who started this business, and a profitable business, it's not charity, it's not dependent on some money which is coming from some foundation. At least not now. Initially, they did it that way. But eventually, they're on their own and they're a profitable company and they're doing something which is good for the environment. In fact, I'll tell you a story. Like after the lockdown started, and I was working on a project on religious violence related to, Delhi riots, so to say. So when we were doing that, we came to know about women and migrant workers who were in a very bad state, extremely, extremely bad state. And these women had no access to menstrual hygiene products anymore. So when you don't have anything to eat, are you going to think about women's menstrual hygiene? Last thing that you're going to think about. So at this time, I had appealed to a friend of mine who is an ambassador with EcoFem. She made these videos in which she explains how to make, cloth pads, basically. So these videos. And then this NGO friend of ours, she actually went out and taught women how to do it to really address this challenge. So you see, businesses can be purpose driven. So this is an illustration that I wanted to give. In fact, some colleagues of mine, Sriram from Narsimunji, Shubhashish from XIMB, we also wrote a case which is right now in, it is under review process and might be published soon. And then you have other such business. For example, this business, Rangasutra, it talks about Sumita is also a very good friend, and the way in which they look at social change is by giving options to craftsmen and artisans to, because these crafts are getting defunct and, they are not marketable anymore and they do not find a market. So what she has done is, they have formed a company which is basically a producer company. And the artisans are actually shareholders in the company, and they go and make products, help them to design such products which have a market. Initially, their product was business to business, which means that they used to sell to IKEA and things like that, but now they have their own website, they have their own offline store as well. So what was driving her? Again, Sumita does not come from a business background, but she felt called to do something. She messed up, or they messed up, but eventually they found ways of, giving these artisans livelihood. That is what drives her. It is not that you want to do money and you make money. You make money because you believe in certain things and you feel called to do it. Similarly, I met this woman who runs this establishment called Natural Men. Turns out that she was a Montessori school teacher when she was in Europe. Okay, then she came to Auroville and she saw that these women whom she was dealing with, so she started, I think, pickle company or something like that. Or she started so she started in the Montessori, but she found that these women have really no work and it would be and a lot of domestic violence. So she wanted to do something for them, which is meaningful and they can have some income. So the whole idea of this natural food product company came up from there. Like I said, she's a Montessori school teacher, but because she wanted to help these women, and therefore she came up with this idea. And phenomenal, you have to. I highly recommend that if you're ever visiting southern part of India, going to Chennai, go up to Pondicherry, go up to Auroville, and such. Like the food is like amazing. You can't believe it. Like how good the food is, right? So these companies are basically purpose-driven business. They have not gone out thinking that I'm going to make money. They thought that we will do something for these people, and they came up with such amazing businesses. I'm sorry about the gender thing here because I've met these women personally, so therefore I'm telling their story. I'm sure there are many men who are doing amazing work, but only that I've not met them yet. So yeah, I don't know why it is coming twice. Must be my mistake, but yeah. So, however, social entrepreneurship is not the only way to do it. Okay. So in Stanford Social Innovation Review, this paper came up where they're talking about how to create conditions so that social entrepreneurs thrive, which means you work in a company, any company, you might be working with HCL, you might be working with Infosys, but while staying with the company, you find ways of doing good to the society, doing good to the environment. So that is also an option. And for us academics, this is our opportunity really to give the tools to our students who might not actually become entrepreneurs immediately, but to let them think in a way which has social innovation in mind, so that even if they are working as employees in big corporations, they can still make a difference to the world around them. So the other option that I talked about, the first one I said how to do it is social innovation. The second one is social marketing. And what social marketing does is that it brings in behavior change. So it uses commercial marketing principles for social good. So traditionally it has been used in health communication campaigns, but it can be used in anything else as well. Like for example, in times of Corona, you can see that the government dictates are continuously changing. The WHO said something initially, now it is saying something else. So communication has to go out. You have to tell people how to behave. And when we do that, one way to do it is to give preachy whatever, do this, do not do that. People don't remember it. But if you have a way in which you understand what is current behavior of people and what is our desired behavior, how do we bring in that voluntary behavior change without preaching them? Now, if you try to make a call anywhere, they will give you a big whatever, they are telling you do this, do not do that. I, for one, I know that my mind immediately, like I check out immediately and I don't want to listen to it. But there are other ways of doing it, which is much more scientific and people will actually make a change in behavior. And social marketing is not really social media marketing. That is using marketing in social media, although it can involve it, but it is much beyond it. And in order to really use social marketing, you have to do the necessary research, which we call formative research. We have to understand who are we trying to change, what are they currently doing, like for example, the mask. A lot of people are saying, we will not wear the mask. It has become a political statement for some parts of the world, not so much in India, but definitely in different parts of the world. So how do you make them change? What do you tell them so that they understand that it's more than your individual right or whatever you are saying? It might be against you also. You might be harming yourself if you're doing it. So what is your current, who are you trying to change? What are they currently doing? What do you want them to do? And how do you get them to do it voluntarily? Not by forcing them, not by police ka danda kind of a thing, but to do it in a way in which they voluntarily want to change. And then, of course, you have creative executions, like, for example, say, for gender role stereotypes, where we think women are supposed to do chores, household chores. Ariel had this campaign called Share the Load. So they were not telling that this is the right way of doing things, but they did it in such a way that it would, tug your heart somewhere and you would voluntarily change. Okay. So formative research, basically, when you do it, you need some amount of expertise in psychology, sociology, and so on and so forth. Consumer insights, behavioral insights. However, the tagline part of it can be creative, and even people who are English majors can actually do it. So what I want to propose is this: social marketing and social enterprises need not go separately. New models need to come in. And this is a recent publication which we published, my colleague Partho and I published this year, which talks about integrating the social enterprise and social marketing with something that we call a shadow framework. Now, shadow framework need not be used everywhere, but this particular case, we were talking about peace and how to bring about peace when there is a community which is marked by violence. How do you bring about it? And we talked about the shadow framework. But there is chance of bringing about new models to think about the environment around us, the planet and people part that we were talking about, so that we can make better societal impact. So lastly, I want to make this invitation to you. Like I mentioned earlier, if you are in a corporate organization, I invite you to collaborate with me. When I'm doing this new course, you can come and talk to my students if you want. You can give them internships, you can give them life projects. If you're a fellow academic, then I would appeal to you that let's get our students together, make them work on joint projects. It can be great fun. I've done that earlier with, I had this collaboration with Duke University in North Carolina at one stage, and it was a course on gender-based violence. So my students at Shiv University and their students actually worked together on collaborative projects. It can be great fun. It can make environmental and societal impact. And also for academics like us, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel that, it's worthwhile to be in this profession, no matter how poorly we are paid. And we are not always paid poorly, but generally we are paid poorly. But it makes up when we make such important contribution. And if you're a student, I invite you to take part in my sessions. When I started this month soon, it will start sometime in August. If you're interested, write to me. My email address is paromita.goswami@SNU, which is my university, Shiv University, .edu.in. I would be happy to share the link with you, and we can have just fun sessions and discussions and see where we can go together. So my appeal to you is to let's work together and make dreams come true. That's all from my side. If you have questions, feedback, comments, I'll be happy to take that.
Paromita, there are many questions and comments.
Yeah.
So I will read it out, and you can answer the questions. There are some comments, some are the questions. So let me read it out.
Sure.
First is from Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam. She says Cochin Airport uses solar power from day one. At least one of the facilities of Infosys is not connected to a state power grid. Probably Infi would be the first Indian company to get UN award for being carbon neutral in 2021. If two corporates can reduce the carbon footprints, then why other companies are not following the same? What are your thoughts in this regard?
To be frank, I really don't know the answer to that question, but I think we need to talk. I think we need to, one way that change can happen is when our students, like as an academic, I can talk about that part. When our students go and join the corporate world, if we sensitize them in a particular way, they are going to see the opportunities to make changes. And I think if international bodies like UN Sustainability Global Institute, they have, like I said, there is this index, right? Sustainability Commitment Report and so on and so forth. And when consumers, so instead of pushing, it can be a pull thing, which in marketing terms, we say that, sometimes you can push a product and it's difficult for that to get done. So there are two angles here. One is from governmental perspective, forcing people to behave in a particular way, corporates to behave in a particular way. The other is that you create a pull. So consumers prefer certain kind of organizations, and therefore organizations also change. So both can be done. And I was amazed actually yesterday. I was hearing this, the Chief Sustainability Officer of Mahindra. He had a webinar in my university. We are having our MBA orientation right now, so he spoke as a part of that MBA orientation. And he was talking that they actually saved 100 crore, goodness, like 100 crore just by adopting sustainable practices. So it makes business sense for companies to really do it. And I think it might not have sunk yet, but I think all of us are responsible to do it, and small steps do matter. Yeah.
There is a question from Professor Arindam Das.
Yes.
Professor Das says, do you thus believe that CSR communication, PR communication, or business communication in general must move beyond the clerical premises of impression management to that of adoption of critical discourses of issue of gender, decolonization, indigenous issues, green studies, ethicalities, of posthumism, etc., and thus critical business communication is the in thing. What is your comments on that?
So when we teach our students, and Arindam, of course, is a business communication professor, when we teach our students, we have to teach them to think critically and look critically and understand critically. But Arindam, my question to you, on the other hand, is, do you see companies doing that? And if they do not, like only by training, not really training, like, making our students to think critically. And then when they become consumers, they will be able to see what is really happening. So it needs to go beyond impression management for sure, 100%. I'm all for it. Now, how we do it, how we bring about the grassroots level change is really the critical issue.
Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam, he is saying, he is a very veteran banker actually. He retired as GM from Bank of Baroda. He says Bank of England is also called as green regulator. They encourage green banking against the UK banks, among the UK banks. In India, RBI does not seem to have thought about it. Do you think the risk weights for green assets should be less, say for a bank sanctioning loans for alternative sources of power? Your perspective, please.
Again, I'm not an expert in this area, and I would love to learn from you as to what can be done. But like I mentioned earlier, I really think we need to, these academics came together and created some pressure on international bodies to make regulatory changes. That you must have heard about benefit corporations. I did not talk about it. I should have. I forgot. I thought there are so many things that I wanted to say that eventually I forgot to talk about it. But benefit corporations, for example, so you like, for example, so Etsy is a benefit corporation, right? It was, now it lost that. But you have to then make regulatory changes which makes you go beyond only profit-oriented goals, right? So therefore, bankers like you, and if your ilk come together, academics like us, or students, or even if we can get some interested NGOs to come together, maybe we can create pressure and make those changes, which has happened in England. Why can't it happen in India? For all you know, it should happen in India, right? All good things should happen in our country. And especially if it is to do with environment and with people, this is high time that we do it. And let's join hands together and do it. If you have some ideas, if you want my students to work on something like that, I would be super happy to do that. Yeah.
There is a comment and question from Dr. Anulekha Banerjee.
Yes.
Anulekha says, Madam, don't you think responsible consumer buying, responsible brand is restricted only to a section of population who are financially well off, educated, and conscious enough to understand the impact of harmful products?
Yeah, so Anulekha, I agree with you that usually responsible brands can be more expensive. So if they are more expensive, then can everybody afford it? But it is not always true. And that's what I was trying to tell when I mentioned this. Say, for example, I was giving this example of EcoFin, right? So and they make these sanitary napkins. So at initially the investment for one sanitary napkin is I think 250, 300 bucks or something. But when you buy them, you don't have to buy disposable sanitary napkins for 5 more years. So therefore, so initially you are making a higher investment, but eventually you cut down on your cost. But can people really understand? When people are really underprivileged, do they understand it? So EcoFam has a model wherein when you and I buy the product, they we can donate 80 bucks and they will make the same pad and they will donate it to underprivileged girls, adolescent girls in schools. So therefore business needs to, like I was saying, that maybe conventional businesses, we don't have models to make that happen, but it is possible to do it if we come up with interesting business models, and then it can work. I would want to be optimistic. And I would also encourage you to look at that sustainable tea at Unilever case, where in certain companies they did get a benefit out of making that connection with Rainforest Alliance. In certain others, not directly, not immediately, because consumers are like mass market consumers. But still, it does good to the planet when you are adopting such practices, right? So eventually, it's difficult to predict. It's like a little messy, but there are companies. This is something. My daughter is a fashion business student, and she is very, almost to the extent of advocacy for the planet. And one of the things she says is there are many small business units which are coming up where the prices are not that horrible. Common people can afford it. And it can be grassroots. Grassroots level awareness and sensitivity can be there. Even if you're poor, you have a sense that this is not good. Even if you're underprivileged, this is not good for the environment. I think in many ways we kind of feel that the underprivileged, because of less education, they are less aware than us. It might not be true. It might not be true. It might be that they are doing it in their own ways. But do the farmers care more about the environment, or do we care more about the environment? So therefore, maybe our lenses also need to change a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your questions. Right?
Yeah, Professor Anandopal, he has some questions.
Yes.
Is management as agent responsible to fulfill the objectives of the company or the objectives of the shareholders? There is no conflict if CSR is reflected in demand, within bracket, effective awareness. What change is suggested to make manager agent of stakeholders, not merely shareholders? Does valuation of firm based on shareholders' return make sense to all stakeholders?
Yeah, so this Professor Pal, thank you for the question. And I'm not a finance person or an accounting person, but the whole idea of stakeholder theory, it talks about not talking or thinking about only one stakeholder, but thinking about the other stakeholders as well. Employees are as much stakeholders. It's not only the shareholders who share, people who have invested in shares, they are the only important person. And that's why I was saying that this new initiative where they're saying, do not call human beings resources, that has started. And some regulatory changes, like benefit corporations, for example. When you become a benefit corporation, there are certain changes that you need to make in your corporate governance structure. And also, the overall country's, what should I say, reporting standards need to reflect that as well. So in India, the last time I checked, there were very few benefit corporations, and large organizations are not benefit corporations. But when I looked at, I was talking about the SRC 500, where they say that these companies are green and red and yellow or whatever. Green means you are making high commitment and you are working up to your commitment. There are many Indian companies that I saw there. So, regulatory changes, I would say, have to come at some stage, or at least we should strive towards it. Yeah.
Professor Rajesh Mahajan, who is again a veteran banker and a professor in IMT Ghaziabad, he says China model, which is working very effectively all over the world and mainly based on cheap price demise, and not follow any ethics? What is your views?
That's a difficult one. Yeah, so consumers, like remember, like when we talk about this affordability question, you know, Tagore's novel, where he talks about Horebai, in which he talks about how the Swadeshis are trying to create an economic pressure on the government and say that we will not use your whatever, we are not going to use certain kind of fabric, we're going to use Swadeshi whatever. It was hard on the farmers, it was hard on poor people, right? But you know, I can't say that there are solutions to it per se, and cheap will go, but you know, for example, say plastics, right? So sometimes it is with the regulatory framework that you bring it, but there are some people who have started doing it because they have realized that they cannot forever say that we're not going to do it. Like PepsiCo is doing it, Colgate is doing it, and they are big giants, right? But they are doing it. So sometimes people have to take that blow for some time at least. Otherwise, governments will come down and take that option away from you. And cheap is, of course, but you know, the word cheap is not only in terms of economic, you know, economic terms, right? What is the effect on the environment? At least the COVID-19 situation, it taught us something that if you consume in an irresponsible way, if you are irresponsible as a corporate, you know, in the long term, you have to pay the price, whether you pay the price now or later. And I am also conscious when I'm saying this, that the number of underprivileged people, and they cannot afford high-priced products. And therefore, the challenge to you and I, to come up with models to help our students to identify ways in which you need not pay a bomb in order to do something which is environmentally sustainable, right? Like I was giving the example of cloth pads. You know, cloth pads, you know, there can be a model in which I help somebody. I am a privileged consumer. I help an underprivileged, and actually there are people who would prefer my product because my model has something which helps the underprivileged. So there can be different models, and the journey has not ended. We have to think about it and come up with models which make such things possible.
Dr. Anulekha Banerjee is saying, majority of the people in India do not have the ability to buy responsible products since it demands a price premium. That is why cheaper products are more popular all over. What are your comments on this?
Right.
You have already answered this.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say, that we have to come up with options. And people can't pay, that is true. So we have to come up with options. Like, for example, say there are small businesses who are making an impact. Say the Etsy model that I was talking about. I'm very fond of their model because what they do is they give a platform to artisans, which are primarily women-run businesses, a platform where they can sell internationally their products directly. And not all of them are horribly expensive. Some of them are, but you are targeting a particular audience. But it's possible to come up with products. I don't want to give up saying that, you know, they are expensive. Of course, some are expensive, but it should be possible to come up with models which you can offer affordable. Say, for example, when we were growing up, did we ever buy rice which came in fancy packets, in plastic packages? No, we did not. We went to stores, we took our gunny bag or whatever, and whatever chola we had, and we had the rice put in there, and then we brought it back. Now, because of convenience, and we want that convenience, now these things are in plastic bags and they're more expensive, right? But the move back has already started. Now you have farmers markets, right? You go to New York, you will find fancy places, farmers market, where they are buying, they're selling products at a premium price. But is it not possible to go back to the old model? Where if we trust the retailer that is not selling me rubbish, then I can buy that product which is not packaged. And if it is not packaged, will it not have a positive impact on the environment? So can't we come up with models which are much more environmental friendly? Yeah.
Dr. Anulekha Banerjee has a comment. I will read it for everyone. 1% of population has 99% of resources and 99% of population has 1% resources. So until this gap is reduced, it becomes difficult to change the society and its behavior. What is your opinion in that context?
There is no debating about it. These are well-known facts that, most people are poor, right? But look at the Chipko movement. That was an environmental movement. Who stood up? Poor people stood up. So it's not, I don't think it is right to, I have seen many educated people, like, the other day I was talking to a colleague, of course I will not name the business school, one of the top 10 business schools in India. And they have a campus, which is kind of a secluded campus, and professors there are not wearing masks. And if you tell them they are not uneducated, why aren't they wearing masks? On the other hand, today my ceiling fan was not working. The guy who came, he became a kind of a problem for me because he was sanitizing his hands so many times. I was like, he wore the gloves and on top of it, he's sanitizing again and again and again. It was becoming a little annoying to me. But educated people like us, they will come up with 100 different whatever saying that why should I wear a mask, right? So therefore, the resource problem is, of course, a very genuine problem. And I'm not trying to put it down the carpet at all. It's something that we need to be aware of, understand it. And that's why I'm saying it's so necessary for us to train our students to think critically, come up with solutions to challenges which bog us. For example, say, I know that my colleague Partho, when he teaches design thinking, he gives this example of incubators, right? Incubators we know are horribly expensive, but they have come up with an incubator, which is a low cost incubator. It does the same work, but does that at a fraction of price. So therefore, the challenge is to us, Anulekha, to you and me, to academics like us, who need to rise up to the occasion and train our students to come up with critical thinking skills and to design better products and to come up with solutions which will solve the challenge of this price premium that we're talking about. Yeah.
There is a question from Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam. He's saying whether Donella Meadows, the limits to growth, and TBL are related. Your perspective.
Sorry, I did not hear the question.
There is one model, Donella's Meadows, the limits to growth. He has given a model, Donella Meadows, and TBL, as we all know, are they related?
I'm not aware of that model, so I will not be able to.
That's all right. It is not necessary to answer all the questions. We shall look into it.
I will not be able to answer that. Yeah, but again, I forgot. I wanted to talk about this paper in macro marketing, which was, I think, published in 2017 or 18, where it talks about the limitations of the economic models that we know and its application in today's world. That how, we need to think beyond economics in some senses and the monetary part of it. And if we do not, then it's difficult. Like, you can't explain, like, what really happened. If anybody told you 1 year back that this is going to happen, would you have believed it? Like, there is this virus which put you in your offices and every organization is working from home. We are taking classes from home. How much of less impact are we making on the environment? If 1 year back anybody told you, would you have believed that? But it is possible. We are doing many things from home. Many organizations have now said that they will stop offline operation in the way in which they operated earlier altogether. I have heard this story, I don't know whether it is true or not. A friend was mentioning that some offices of big newspaper companies, they have locked the offices and said, we are not going to operate in that mode anymore, even after Corona gets over. Like, newspaper as we knew it in paper form will not happen anymore. Did we think that this is possible? Now it has become possible, right? So economic models as we knew it from the time of Milton Friedman, when he said business of business is to do business, to now, if it has changed, why don't it change later? What stops us from doing it? Yeah.
There is another point by Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam, which is a better reporting system, TBL, triple bottom line, integrated reporting, or global reporting initiative?
Again, like I said, this is not my competence area, but That TED talk that I mentioned of Wendy Wood's BCG, she talks about total societal impact, and these frameworks are not really something that I deal with. My finance and accounting colleagues will be knowing about them, but yeah, I think right now many companies are publishing sustainability reports. I don't know, Ashish, they will be able to say whether that is an absolute requirement or they are doing it
No,
voluntarily.
actually, the sustainability reports, BAC 1000 companies, top 1000 are to report sustainability, but that is based on the national guidelines issued by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. But I believe integrated reporting and GRI, both are now collaborating, and integrated reporting is considered to be the latest one. And if you can implement that better, perhaps that will give an impression, give a story that whether the company is creating social value or not. Then Mehek has a question. He is saying that uh, in pandemic times when companies are struggling to sustain economically, how can they contribute to CSR?
In fact, I am not a very huge fan of CSR. I personally, I think
Okay,
a lot of
Mehak has
companies,
another question. Companies are making their supply chain sustainable, which indirectly contributes to the environment positively. Do you think Schedule 7 of our constitution, which lists CSR activities, include this as well?
again, I don't know, but the idea is if you're, I'm going to get like this course that I was mentioning. I am hoping to get this gentleman who was the global sustainability chief of Starbucks to get on board and to really understand his perspective on what that supply chain really does. Of course, supply chain plays a extremely important role, but regulation wise, what can really be done? I'm not an expert on that, so I will not try to comment.
No, the important point here, Mehek, is that when we are talking about responsible companies, then they also have to look at, while deciding the parameters on which they will select the supply chain partners, that they are also following the same kind of responsible or same kind of code of conduct, if I say. And therefore, the large companies should be able to do that. But unfortunately, if you look at the Bangladesh tragedy in 2013,
Right.
where 1,200 of the textile workers died and 2,500 were injured. Only after that, the mega brands which are purchasing from them, because those are the supply chain where they want to cut costs and they go to the developing countries, they have now come out with the safety measures, and they say that we shall do the safety audit in the Bangladesh textile mills to ensure that workers are given a safe place to work. So this is how the supply chain can also be influenced to adopt good practices. Now Mehek has another question, but I am not taking that because of the time is not permitting us. Last question is coming from Pradeep Shamanto, who is saying, what is your observation on the role of social marketing in social change? He is from University of Kalyani, Professor Pradeep Shamanto.
Yes. So, I used to offer this course on social marketing for social change, although I offered it specifically for gender violence. But of course, social marketing, I completely, fully believe that social marketing can be an agent of social change, 100%. And we need to teach the tools to our students so that they can use it in their everyday lives. And in fact, to the extent that I will say this, because I believe mostly we have academics and corporate executives here. So what I do is instead of leaving it to elective, which people might or might not take, I incorporate in my main course, my main core marketing course, and the projects that they do have a societal or environment. Not all of them. If they don't want to do it, I don't force per se. But most of them will have a societal angle or an environmental angle. So although sometimes I do not teach social marketing as a separate elective, and they take it because everybody is not going to take it, but I try and push my agenda through my core courses, and they do the projects there. Yeah.
Okay, Paramita, that was the last question. But before I close, I have some observations. I hope you will permit me to say that. First of all, I see your passion and dedication, emotional attachment to the subject. But as I know, you know that I am little skeptical about all this because I have seen these companies much more than you because of my age. And I can tell you the companies that we have named, if you take like Hindustan Unilever, they are selling fairness creams, Fair and Lovely, from 1977. And they sold it to the dark girls to say that it will be easier for you to get married. And if you look at the journey they have, you find that they are changing from time to time. When the women go to employment, they say that it is easy to get an employment if you become fair and you become white. I don't know what that means. So it is not a responsible behavior. When you talk about Coke, they polluted the water. They really not conserve the water for long, and only last 20 years they are doing something. So to my mind, business is not responsible. It is the society becomes responsible. They can create pressure on the business to act in a manner so that society becomes better. So it is our responsibility to create that. Because if you look at when the TBL came, triple bottom line, if I remember correctly, it was first brought out in 1998. And that was lapped by all the companies. They started using that as in their annual report, but they never paid any attention other than environment. And if you look at in the triple bottom line, the way it has come, there was a third wave on environment in 1990. Only then the companies became environment friendly or they become conscious about the environment. So what you are doing is absolutely right thing, but as I said, I am little skeptical that companies themselves will do it, but I hope that they will do it as I have said in my last column. But thank you very much for your discussion. It was very interesting, and we shall see that your efforts will bring that what kind of change. And when you say purposeful business, I can tell you that over the last 10 years, every company is writing some purposes, large or small, more other than vision and mission statement. So every company has a purpose, but I am not very sure that whether they are pursuing that purpose or they are going for shareholder value. And I can also tell you that in a recent Harvard Business Review article, it talks about don't look at the business case for your CSR or social responsibility, because almost all kind of research says that it never reflects in the valuation in the capital market. And now perhaps some researchers are trying to convince, because NGOs are trying to convince companies, as you have saying that it makes sense to do business because you earn profit or maximize your profit or you do better business. But this kind of business case is not yet being developed. So again, I say that ultimately it's the society, the pressure of the society, pressure of activism that will bring the change. And you are one of the champions for that. So congratulations to you, Paromita. Yeah, thank you. Now, Bhaskar, you can close this session.
Thank you.